We are continuing our journey through the book of Ecclesiastes with the theme, when life comes up empty, just like this clicker is coming up empty. I need some help back there. The title of today's message is, So You Want to Be Rich? Taken from Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 8 through chapter 6, verse 9. It seems like everybody's trying to get rich or trying to keep what they have. Legalized gambling is on the increase. Millions of people buy lottery tickets hoping to score on that Powerball. Some are heavy into investing and playing the stock market. In these tough economic times, people want to be rich. You know, maybe it's better than being poor for some of you, but there's some issues with being rich. The teacher, Solomon, has something to say about those who would be rich. As a matter of fact, he unveils 4 serious pitfalls of being rich. You would think that being rich would solve all your problems, but it sure doesn't. So let's listen to what the teacher has to say about riches in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 8 through chapter 6, verse 9. And ask this question of yourself. So, do I want to be rich? Maybe not after you hear this message. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 8 and 9 say, If you see the oppression of the poor and the violent perversion of justice and righteousness in a province, do not marvel at the matter. For high official watches over high official, and higher officials are over them. Moreover, the profit of the land is for all. Even the king is served from the field. The first serious pitfall about wanting to be rich or being rich is that riches need protecting. Riches need protecting. What Solomon is describing here as he continues to examine why life can be so empty is a scene where in a particular province there's a corrupt system. You have the poor being oppressed, and you have the officials watching over each other or protecting each other. Maybe you're not understanding what he's saying, but let's put it this way. In order to cheat poor people, you have to put a system into place. You understand what I'm saying? You can't just go up and say, I'm going to take your house from you. Everybody would be in an uproar if you did that, right? However, if you have the law on your side, you can go and take whatever you want. And so what the rich do is build a corrupt system. It's not you that I'm trying to hurt, but we have to go by the law. Well, I know I wrote the law, but it's okay. You don't need to know that. All you need to know is that this law means that I can take your house. This law means that I can keep you working at a low wage while I line my pockets with all of your labor. Corrupt systems are put into place in order to serve the rich. And Solomon makes this statement. This should not surprise you. For wherever there are human beings, there will always be someone who will be trying to figure out a way to get what's yours. They will always try to find a way to build a system where they have the advantage and you are at a disadvantage. So the poor are cheated. The poor are stepped on. Becoming rich is often done at the expense of others. Very few people become rich without hurting somebody else. Not me. It's not me. There are some people who get their money because they're born into money. But how did those who originally become rich get that way? Quite often you look back into the 20s and the 30s, you look at the oil barons and the steel moguls and all the people who had wealth. They had more money than the United States did. Where did that money come from? Often it was at the expense of the poor laborer. They got over on people. Can you imagine? And it always kind of confused me. How is it that somebody who sits behind a desk and doesn't know the job makes all the money? But the people who are slaving in the mines, the people who are doing the work, the people who are in the factories putting together the cars, they make next to nothing. How is it that the people that sit behind the desk are worth millions and millions of dollars in salary, and the workers are working for minimum wage? Does that seem fair? Well, we pay these guys because they have the ideas. They have the expertise. They don't know how to do the job. They're not sweating. They're not putting in the effort. Yet they're the ones that make all the money. Well, it's done that way so that their riches are protected. They make the law. You know how the world has adulterated the golden rule, right? You know, the golden rule is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But the world says the one who has the gold makes the rules. That's the golden rule, right? And in practice, that's what happens. If you have money, you can decide what laws are passed, and you can influence government, and you can protect your wealth. It's all about protecting wealth. And so, if you want to be rich, you have to recognize that you got to protect your wealth. And often to protect your wealth, you're going to hurt somebody. You're going to hurt the little person. You're going to hurt the poor person. Is that okay with you? Could you live with yourself? Some people say, hey, as long as I got the money, I don't care about people. But that's no way to live. That is a pitfall. That is not true existence. That's living off of other people. And look at verse 9. Moreover, the profit of the land is for all. God has designed that everybody is supposed to benefit, not just the rich, but everyone. Now, there's some debate as to what this verse is trying to say. It's a very unclear verse. Is it saying that the king is served from the field, meaning that the king is at the head of the corruption? That he gains the most because he's king? Or is it saying that the king is the only person who can stop the corruption that's going on? Well, the bottom line is this. If you want to be rich, if indeed you are rich, then you're going to need to protect your riches. And that can be a full-time job. Making sure that nobody is going to touch your stuff, making sure that the laws are in your favor so that you don't have to give up your riches for somebody else. There's a second pitfall for being rich. Look at verses 10 through 12. He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. So what profit have the owners except to see them with their eyes? The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much. But the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. The second pitfall is riches cannot satisfy. Riches cannot satisfy. Notice that if you love silver, if you love money, money will not satisfy you. Have you found that out? Say you're working in a job and you're kind of low on the totem pole. You say, oh, if I could just become a supervisor, my life would be better. Pardon me as we switch mics here. And you get that position. You become the supervisor, and with the supervisor position, you get certain perks, and you get a bump in your pay. Have you ever noticed that when you get that bump in your pay, you've already spent that? You've already begun to exceed that because now, I don't have to hold back. I don't have to deny myself anything. So you buy a new car. You move from an apartment to a house, and you make sure that you have the best of everything. All the new stuff that comes out, you begin to spend the money. And next thing you know, you're back in the hole. So then you say, well, if I could be the director, I'd be okay. And so you start pursuing that, and you get that position. And by the time you get that position, do you think that your spending has leveled off? No. Your spending increases with the amount of money that you have. Now, I'm not saying that's true of everybody, but it's true of so many people. They think that money will solve their problems, but it doesn't. Because the more you have, the more you want. And when you get that, you will find that that's not enough. And when you think that you got to this level, oh, if I could just make six figures. So you get to $100,000, and you find, I got so many bills. I have so much that I'm responsible for. So if I could just get to that 150,000 level, if I could just get to the 200,000 level, if God would bless me and let me make $500,000, I'd be okay. You know that there are sports figures who make millions of dollars, and they don't know where their money is gone. See, it's not the amount of money. Money will never satisfy. You know what money is like? Remember the beginning of the series, and you see the bubbles up there. The word vanity is like soap bubbles. When you chase after money, it's like, okay, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. It's never enough. It's never enough. Money comes up empty. Because if you were to tell me, well, Pastor, if you give me X amount of dollars, I'll be so happy. Well, you'd be happy for a moment. You know people like that? They say, oh, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so, let me hold $10. $10 would be just enough for me to take care of my business. And then the next time you see them, it's $20. But I thought $10 was enough to take care of your business. Well, I got other business I got to take care of now. And you see, it just increases. There is no satisfaction when you live for money. Have you learned that lesson yet? When you chase after the dollar, you'll never catch it. Because you'll always want more.
But not only that, Solomon says, when goods increase, they increase who eat them. You know what he's talking about? The hangers on. You know, you get a little more money, and people say, oh, I heard you got a raise. I'm talking about family members now. Oh, I heard you got a raise.
How about that?
I remember my kids were coming up. You know, when I got a raise, they thought that meant that they get a raise in their allowance. Hey, Dad, you got more money, so that means we can have more money. So the more you have, people start coming out of the woodwork. Long lost cousin that, you know, you haven't seen in 20 years. See, now I would never gamble. I would never play the lottery or any of that. But you know, one of the problems with that, if you do hit it, you can't keep it secret. They blast it all over the news. So imagine you hit the Powerball and you got $50 million. You know, there would be a whole line of people at your door. Hey, cuz, you know we tight. How about a little money? You can help me out of my jam. You know, all of a sudden, because you have more, there are more people that make demands on you. And when people make demands on you, you can't be satisfied with what you have. Trying to hide it. Trying to duck people. And then Solomon makes this very clear statement in verse 12. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much. You know, when you work hard, you can sleep well. But the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. At night, you're worrying about who's going to call you next. And, you know, maybe I need to change my telephone number. I got to get out of this neighborhood and move to another place where people don't know me because they just keep bugging me for what I have. And then you're worrying about the stock market and you're worrying about this, that, and the other. Am I going to have enough profit? Is money going to keep coming in? And you can't sleep. Money doesn't satisfy. Well, there's a third pitfall concerning riches found in verses 13 through 20 of Ecclesiastes chapter 5. There is a severe evil which I have seen under the sun. Riches kept for their owner to his hurt. But those riches perish through misfortune. When he begets a son, there is nothing in his hand. As he came from his mother's womb, naked shall he return, to go as he came, and he shall take nothing from his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. And this also is a severe evil. Just exactly as he came, so shall he go. And what profit has he who has labored for the wind? All his days he eats in darkness, and he has much sorrow and sickness and anger. Here's what I have seen. It is good and fitting for one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life which God gives him, for it is his heritage. As for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage and rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he will not dwell unduly on the days of his life, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart. The third pitfall is that riches are useless after this life. Riches are useless after this life. Solomon begins by talking about those who hoard. It's evil to hoard. Riches kept for the owner to his hurt. How can hoarding hurt you? When you hoard, you're not sharing with others, and it damages relationships. on top of that, when you hoard, you have to keep your stuff guarded. You have to hide. You know, those who hoard, they just collect and just keep it for themselves. You go in their house, you find stuff here and there all over the place. You know, they don't use banks. They don't, you know, they just keep it because they feel they have to keep it guarded. And you do know that misers are miserable people. You can't spell miserable without miser. But the flip side of that is, with all this hoarding, your riches can also be quickly lost. Solomon says, but those riches perish through misfortune. You know, people are always talking about saving up for a rainy day. But what happens when a rainy day becomes a rainy year? You have hoarded, you have saved, you have scrimped, you have decided not to spend. You're just going to keep collecting. And then all of a sudden, maybe there's a bad investment. Or maybe you have an extended illness. Or maybe you get cheated out of your money somehow. What you had today can be gone tomorrow. So Solomon says, you know, you come into this world naked. You're going to leave this world naked. You can't take your wealth with you. So what sense does it make to hoard it all? You're going to collect all this stuff. And just like Jesus told the parable of the rich fool in Luke chapter 12, you know, he tore down his barns to build bigger barns. I mean, he was just collecting all this stuff. And he said, soul, now you can relax. You can eat, drink, and be merry because you have much goods. And Jesus said, you fool. Today your soul is going to be required of you. Then who's going to have all this stuff? If you're spending all your time hoarding, just collecting, and not putting it to good use, remember this. When you die, you can't take it with you. Now, please understand that your money is no good in heaven, but it ain't no good in hell either. So I don't know where your destination may be, but in either place, you're not taking your money with you. So you better take care of using it well on this side of life. Then Solomon throws a little ray of sunshine. He says that God-given riches are to be enjoyed right now. Now, what is God-given riches? It's not ill-gotten gain. Notice in verses 18 through 20, he talks about those who eat and drink and enjoy the good of their labor. Verse 19, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage and rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he will not dwell unduly on the days of his life, which means he's not going to dwell on his money and what he can do with his money, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart. Now, for scripture, 1 Timothy chapter 6 was read, verses 6 through 10 and 17 through 19. Let me go back to verses 17 through 19. It says, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. You're not enjoying what God has given you if you're hoarding it. Then he says, let them do good, that they may be rich in good works. So you see, when you have riches, you're supposed to do good. You're supposed to do something positive with the blessing that God has given you. To do good doesn't mean that you're doing good to yourself. Like, oh, I've had such a bad day at work today, and so I'm going to go to the mall and buy me something to make me feel better. That's not doing good. Doing good means that you're using the blessing that God has given you to benefit somebody else. Verse 19, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. You see, Solomon and Paul are on the same page when it comes to riches. They're useless beyond this life. I know they talk about streets paved with gold, but if that's so up in heaven, you know that gold was cheap? Gold is not going to mean anything. You're not going to be walking around with a wallet or a pocketbook in heaven, I can tell you that. You're not going to need it. You're not going to have to buy anything, because Jesus Christ will be in heaven. You will be in his presence, and you will need nothing. There'll be no corner stores in heaven. There'll be no Walmart in heaven. You won't need to buy anything. Money is not important when it comes to eternity. So the question is, what are you doing with what God has given you right now? Riches are useless after this life. There's a final pitfall concerning riches. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 9. There's an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and honor, so that he lacks nothing for himself of all he desires, yet God does not give him power to eat of it, but a foreigner consumes it. This is vanity, and it is an evil affliction. If a man begets 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with goodness, or indeed he has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better than he. For it comes to vanity and departs in darkness, and its name is covered with darkness. Though it has not seen the sun or known anything, this has more rest than the man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice, but has not seen goodness, do not all go to one place? All the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the soul is not satisfied. For what more has the wise man than the fool? What does a poor man have who knows how to walk before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. The final pitfall about riches that Solomon gives us is that riches don't bring contentment. Riches don't bring contentment. Contentment is being satisfied with what you have. Notice that in this case, God gives a person wealth, riches, so much so that he doesn't lack anything of himself that he wants, that he desires. But then he has an attitude problem. It is no longer what God has given him, it's what he now has that he feels that it's of his own. So God lets him go. And he doesn't have the power to eat or to enjoy his riches. In this case, Solomon says, a stranger will take what he has. You know that as a hoarder, as a rich person who does not take good care of the blessing that God has given to him, somebody else is going to get that money. Again, because you can't take it with you in death. And so it's left here, and somebody else is going to have it. And then Solomon gets a little exaggerated here. He states a case of even if a man has 100 children. I don't think anybody in the Bible had 100 children. I think Solomon's son Rehoboam came close. I think the Bible records that he had 88 kids. Boy, I can't imagine dinner at that house. But imagine, if you will, that's what Solomon said. Imagine a man who has 100 children and has lived a long time. But his soul is not satisfied. There is no contentment with the stuff that he has. And so much so, there's this line in verse 3, indeed, he has no burial. Now, on the surface, what does that mean? It means that his own kids didn't even give him a proper send-off. And maybe because he was a workaholic or what, he didn't have a joyful life. He focused on his wealth and not on God. And he has no joy. And it's like that scene, which I hate. One of the things that I hate about deaths is when families act ugly. They're concerned about who's going to get this and that. You know, they start fighting about what's left. And what Solomon is saying, in a sense, is, you know, the kids don't care about dad. They just want the will read. What am I going to get? What did he leave? What did that old man leave me? Oh, he left a legacy of being concerned about money, about riches, without contentment. You know, there are many causes for joylessness when it comes to riches. You can be wealthy, but ill. I've seen some movies where you got this eccentric old millionaire, billionaire, who's trying to live as long as he can. He's on all kinds of machines, and he just doesn't want to die because he's got so much money. Doesn't want to leave his money. And so he has a private, not a private doctor, he has a private hospital. You know, he pumped me up with the latest stuff. I want to stay alive as long as I can. That's not living. Why? Because I don't want my kids to have my money. That's sad, right? And you can be joyless when it comes to being rich because you're worrying about what might happen, or you're fearing because you have some ill-gotten gain that it's going to catch up to you. You cut some corners and you're just waiting for the knock on the door, for the feds to come and say you've done some illegal stuff. Or maybe it's because you were a workaholic and you just work, and you didn't have time to spend your wealth. You just kept accumulating and accumulating. One day I'm going to go on those cruises. One day I'm going to visit Europe. One day I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and you drop dead. Solomon continues with this hypothetical case, saying that even if you lived 1,000 years or lived to be 2,000 years old, now we know the oldest man in the Bible was Methuselah. He lived to be 969. Solomon is saying, even if you live to be 2,000 years old, but has not seen goodness, do not all go to the same place? Even if you're going to live to be 2,000, you're still going to die. If you live to be 3,000, you're still going to die. There's going to come a day when you're going to drop dead. And so what has riches brought you? There is no contentment. So Solomon concludes, it's better, if you're in this condition, it's better that you were not even born, that you were stillborn. Because such a life as this brings misery. You hate yourself, and everybody around you hates you. That's not living. Please understand that length of life won't make things better unless there's a change of heart. Length of life just means longer discontentment. Trying to live long enough for things to turn around, that one day I will be happy, just like one day I'll have enough, it never comes. So Solomon says in verse 7, all the labor of man is for his mouth. All labor is for food, for survival. Why do people work? People work so that they can buy food, so that they can live. That's why you work, right? Now, I know some of you don't work. I'm not talking about those of you that I see right now. But I know there's some people that don't work. They're leeches. They live off of other people. But for the most part, people work in order to survive. This is a true statement of people. But then he says, there's no difference between the wise and the fool when it comes to this. Or the poor. Everybody's doing the same thing. They are working to survive. But better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. It's better to have what is tangible, what you can put your hands on, than a dream. Dreaming about what if. Dreaming about if I had millions, what I would do. Get your head out of the clouds. Deal with what you have. Find contentment with what God has given to you. So the point of this message is simple, 4 words. Don't trust in riches. Don't trust in riches. My friend, being rich certainly won't get you into heaven. Salvation cannot be bought with money. The price was paid through the blood of Jesus Christ. I encourage you to receive him today as your Savior if you have never done so. For my sisters and brothers, even Christians can get caught up in pursuing wealth. Are you trying to replace faith in God with a loaded bank account? Don't dismiss this. It takes a lot of faith to trust God to meet your needs than to think that you have enough money at Wells Fargo or Bank of America. I can just write out a check. I can just pull out my debit card. I can get what I want. I don't have to trouble the Lord. No. No. Don't let money replace your faith in God, because your bank account can be emptied in a day. You can go to Columbus on a Thursday, to the flea market, and go to one of those vendors, and you pay with your debit card, and somehow they get your debit card number, and they have it hooked up in the computer world where somebody has your information and starts charging your account. I remember on my birthday in 2008, a nice birthday present, my account was cleared out. Everything wiped out because somebody got my credit information. Fortunately, the bank understood that this was a scam, and they put my money back in my account. But it took several days. My point is, your account can be wiped out in a moment. Don't put your trust in your bank account. You can lose your high-paying position in the blink of an eye. Your retirement funds can disappear with the snap of a finger. Don't trust in riches. Trust in God who supplies all of your needs. Truth be told, don't get mad at me, but I got to tell the truth. We need to live on less anyway, and we need to give more away. You realize that giving brings joy? Try to give something to someone in need this week and experience contentment and say to the Lord, I'm not going to trust in riches. I'm putting my trust in you. Let's pray.